Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's been quite a while since I've finished my modeling tutorial, and I'm picking up exactly where I left off, and I'm going to show you generally how to rig custom characters or custom created models inside of Roblox Studio. Now, I'm not going to rig the model that we done previously, and I only say that because I think I found a much better way to explain the process of rigging. I have an older rigging video up, but I think I could explain it a little better, um, given my experience and I already learned from that video. First question we want to ask ourselves, I guess, and it's good to understand, is what is the process of rigging? Rigging is the process of giving a model or a mesh a skeleton for the animation process. And this is done in a very specific way inside of Roblox Studio. And it's different than things like Blender, which has a kind of similar but also completely different workflow when it comes to rigging skinned meshes. What we're going to be rigging here is segmented models, and this is kind of the industry standard for Roblox. If you're working with mesh deformation, you're going to be going and following uh, rigging tutorials that coincide with normal Blender mechanics. But segmented models in this case are things like this Roblox character. They're made up of segments, and they have joints that are distinct individual parts, and they don't make up one master mesh. Like if I were to, in that case, if I were to click on this model, it would all be one physical entity. We will not be working with that, and we'll be working with things like this Plateosaurus I have here, which is segmented. It's kind of a mess, but it's in segments. But now that that's out of the way, let me actually walk you through this process of rigging, and it's very easy to understand, and it's very quick to pick up. I'm going to go ahead and get over to this little model that I made over here. This is kind of a simplified dinosaur, and this is going to show us the basic understanding or the basic concepts of rigging, and I'll walk you through how to do it. When you have a completed model, like let's say this little dinosaur here, you're first going to want to give it something called a humanoid root part. And the humanoid root part is pretty much the master root part, which is used in character rigs. That's going to serve as the base of everything when it comes to the control points and the basis of our skeleton. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking this torso joint that we have here, the body joint, and I'm duplicating it with Shift D in Roblox, and I'm kind of just scaling it. And I like putting my humanoid root parts just behind the front arms and just after the legs. And I'll make it different widths than something like the main body part over here, just so it'll be easier to select. And it generally, you want to think of this as kind of like the body hitbox, if anything. And Roblox is going to go ahead and autosave and ruin my flow of things. There we go. So we're going to want to label this part the humanoid root part. And I don't know if you actually have to capitalize the R in root and the P in part, but that is typically what is necessary. To separate this from the rest of the model, and to make it easier on myself, I'm just going to go ahead and make this red. And it's not coloring. That's probably because I don't have used part color on. There we go. And I'll go ahead and make its transparency. I'll go ahead and make it 0.6. So that's step one. You want to establish your humanoid root part. The next step you want to do is make sure that all of the parts that you want to move, and this is very important, every part that you want to move, not different color pieces or different attachments to the model, we'll get to that in a second. Every piece you want to move should be named. And so right here, the body is going to be called the torso right here, or I could just call it the body. I'll call this the neck segment. This is the head, this is the jaw, the arms, and the legs. It's typically good to practice industry standard by naming left and right things, things that are symmetrical on both sides. Start with the word left or right. So that way, if you ever export this to other softwares, or if you have somebody who specifically does code that likes side preferences, they can go ahead and start with left or right rather than arm or leg. But yeah, left arm, left leg, right arm, right leg on this side. What we're going to go ahead and do then is group our model. And we're going to establish that this is our model over here. And I'll go ahead and just name this rigging practice. Obviously your name is going to be different. And after we have everything named, we'll go ahead and double check. It seems like everything that we have is named and our humanoid root part is established. We're going to go ahead and click this little plus right here and then add a humanoid. You can also search it in this top bar right here. And that'll essentially give your model the ability to be rigged. What we're going to do here is going to go to the plugin up here in the plugins tab, and I'll link this in the description. This is called the Rig Editor. And we're going to go ahead and click on this plugin, and I already have it up here in the top left. And it says select a valid rig to modify, and it says must contain a humanoid or animation controller. In this case, we have a humanoid over here, and so if we go ahead and hover over our model, it'll highlight, and we can go ahead and click it and click continue. So now what you're going to do is essentially attach every joint to each other. And the way this works specifically in Roblox is you want to attach the parent, what's called the parent joints, to the child joints. So first off, we're going to think of what's going to be our main body, or main, the biggest point of motion where everything is going to come back to. In this case, it's the body. Everything that comes out of this model, from the neck to the head to the legs to this tail, is going to be attached to this body. This body is going to be the first thing we're going to establish. So I'm going to go ahead and click my humanoid root part in this red color. That's going to be the first thing we want to collect, and we're going to select the torso after that, the body. And essentially what that does is tells the body that it is going to be directly connected to the humanoid root part, and it's going to work that way for basically the rest of the rigging process. We're going to select the parent and we're going to select the child. So for example, continuing on here, I'm going to go ahead and select the body. The body is the base joint, and what is connected to the body is this first tail piece. And so now we get a ball joint that stems from the body to the tail. And then this tail piece that comes off, this tail piece isn't a child of the body's joint, it's a child of this tail piece preceding it. So you're going to have a joint between the tail, or the body and the tail, the first tail piece, and then the first tail piece and the second tail piece. So again, click the first tail piece and then the second. And now you can kind of see where this is going along, and it's going to form these ball joints, which we'll move in a second, and it's tapering towards the parent. So this right here, this ball joint that we have unedited, it's going to be tapering to the parent that it's connected to, just the center of mass, because that's what ROBLOX does. And then from the body, I'll go ahead and click the body, and then the left leg, and then I'll click the body and the right leg. That's telling the right legs that they're going to be attached to the body. Body and left arm, and then body and right arm. And that's set in stone there. And then I'm going to go ahead and take the body, connect it to the neck. And then the head is going to be connected to the neck. So then I'll click the neck, the body. And then I have this jaw piece. This jaw piece is not going to be articulating with the neck. It's going to be articulating with the head. So it's going to be the head is going to be the parent, the jaw is going to be the child. I'm going to go and click the parent, or the parent of the head, and the child of the jaw. So now the jaw is going to articulate with the head. And so now you have basically rigged the model, but what you're going to notice here is that if you were to open up the animation editor and you were to click this, things don't move the way they're supposed to. They're not articulating the way that they're supposed to. The jaw is going to be connected to the head, as we see here, but things aren't, they're not rotating on their proper, or where we want them. And this is the second part of rigging, where if we go back into this rig editor, click our model, continue. Now that we've created all of our joints, we're going to edit them. And so if we remember that every little ball joint that we have is going to be tapering to the parent, you're going to want to find the best plane of, or the best joint that's going to fit for that body piece. And so I'll start with the tail over here because it's easiest. The tail is not going to be rotating this at the center right here. This ball joint represents where everything is going to be rotated, and so for that matter, I'm going to click it and move it this way. And I'll go ahead and move it up a little bit. So now we're telling that, then you could kind of see it tapering towards the two things that it's parented to, that this tail joint is going to articulate where this ball joint is. And over here for this tail, the second tail joint, I'll go ahead and move it in between here, and then move it up maybe a little bit. And now we're telling the second tail piece that it's going to articulate right here. And so now if we were to open our animation editor, you can see now that the tail and both the tail pieces articulate where we told these ball joints to go. And now this is a lot better in terms of range of motion. And now we're just going to go ahead and apply that to the rest of the model. And I think I could do it with just talking. Or just talking over it. The neck is going to articulate right here. The head is going to articulate right here. And the jaw is going to articulate right here, and then somewhat between the head and the jaw. For the legs, what you could do, you can go ahead and click this ball joint, and then you have different settings up here. You have translate, and then if you click Z, you can change it to rotate, and then you could just select it in general. So I'm going to select these two by holding shift and click with select. I'll go ahead and click Z again for translate. I can translate both of these guys up. I'll go ahead and click Z to get back on that select, shift click these guys, and then I'll translate these again. And you'll see up here there's different increments you can change these ball joints from. So I am currently on the humanoid root part alignment, so it's a block that's going directly vertical and directly horizontal. I'm currently now rotating on, or translating on its axis. If I go ahead and click C, I'll translate on the joint's own axis, and then C is the parent, C again is the parent part, and then the child part 0 and part 1, and then to global root part, back in again. And then you could change the increment up here. That was really a mouthful for understanding rigging, but now we have completed our rig, and everything should move accordingly. And this is basically a point of trial and error of what you're going to want fit, or of what you're going to want and prefer. This is going to be a big process of editing and fine-tuning. You're going to want to repeatedly come back to this animation editor and test the joints that you've created. Now that that's done, let's say we've completed this model. I'll go ahead and hold Alt and click this humanoid root part, and I'll just go ahead and make it invisible. And now that's basically our finished model. The issue comes up is when you have joints that are attached. So you'll notice up here, I don't have clean joints that directly segment these parts from one another. These are multiple different colors that are going to act as one joint. There's no just singular neck one joint in this part right here. And so now I'll show you the process of welding. If we go over to this custom guy over here, I've given this guy an eyeball. I've go ahead and named it eyes, and I've separated the neck, the body, and the tails into two different colors. You have the main body part, which is just simply listed as tail 1 here and tail 2 here. And then this underbelly part, which I've listed as tail 1 underbelly and tail 2 underbelly. If we were to rig this the same as the last model, we would have to consider that there are two parts that are stemming from this one joint. And that's not necessarily an issue, but it becomes an issue when there's things attached after it. So what welding does is says, hey, these two parts right here that act as one joint, we're going to go ahead and weld these to one specific part and then base all of our movement off of that part's joint. So if I were to go ahead and open up the clip editor, you'll kind of see what I'm getting at here. I had to fix a little issue there. Anyway, if we go ahead and click on this model, assuming that it's rigged the same way as the previous, and if we ignore the parts that I've added, these aren't going to rotate properly. These parts are going to be floating, and this is going to create a big issue like that. So how do we tell these joints to move with these ones? What we're going to go ahead and do is go to a plugin called Building Tools by F3X, and I find this way the easiest. There's many different ways you could weld things in ROBLOX. I've gotten a lot of crap from my friends saying that this process is weird, but I think it's the most efficient. I don't know what's going on with the hitbox here. I'm going to go ahead and regroup that. But for the parts that are connected to each other, so this tail one piece and this colored piece, I'm going to go ahead and select both of them. I'll go ahead and do Control G to group them. And so now they're in their own group. And I'll set the primary part of this group to the joint that I want to be the dominant one. The one that I've already rigged, or the one that I'm going to rig that I'm going to base the ball joint off of. So in this case, it's going to be tail one. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to open up Building Tools by F3X. I'm going to go ahead and go to this welding option over here. It looks like a chain link. I'll go ahead and click just the model up here. And I'll click Weld to Last. What that's going to do is it's going to create a weld on that primary part. And so now it's telling you that this decorative piece is now welded to this joint. So if I were to go in this clip editor now, and if I were to move this tail joint, now the colored piece is binded to that to that part. And I don't need to worry about rigging it on or anything about that. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with this tail piece. I'll click both of them, make a group, and I'll set the primary part to the joint that I want. Then go ahead and go back to Building Tools by F3X and click Weld to Last. And because it's already rigged, I should just be able to go and check it. There we go. Some common issues that people have in rigging is their parts might not move. And so generally it'll tell you if you have parts that are anchored like this, or you might just have one part that's anchored. I'll go ahead and anchor this one for show. And if I were to go into here, it does tell me that. So they've updated that. That's good. An issue that people might have with rigging is not properly rigging the right parts. So if I go ahead and purposely mess up, let's say I'll go ahead and delete these. Let's say I'm trying to make this neck joint, and I'll go ahead and rig the torso to the neck, and then I'll go ahead and do this backwards if I accidentally do the head to the torso. What you're telling this neck joint here is that it's being parented to two different parts, and it can only go on one. Originally, I had this first option from the torso to the neck. I'm telling it that its primary communication of articulation is going to be between the neck and the torso, and then up here, it's going to be the head and the neck. That seems a little bit confusing, but it's in the process of how you do things. You want to go from the inside and go outside and work your way outside, not outside and work your way inside. And so I'll go ahead and repeat the process that I did, even though I just explained it, because it might be confusing. We're supposed to go from this torso to the neck, and then from the neck to the head. And if I go ahead and quickly edit these joints, it'll rotate like I want. It's beautiful, ignoring the parts that I didn't weld. However, if I were to go and do the head, then the neck, and then the neck, and then the torso, and then try to do the same articulation points, you're going to get a weird error in the Animation Studio Editor that tells you that there's parts being afflicted by multiple motor 6Ds or joints. And so I'm not going to be able to move. And so to that, you're going to have to go in and make sure that you made everything parented to the right part. There was a lot of talking in this video, and I try to make it thorough, and this is probably a lot longer than what I initially would have thought. But I wanted to communicate things as hopefully as clearly as I could. So an example of doing all this is if I were to go ahead and go to this model, and let's say I want this black part to be the base of, or to be the skeleton of our animal base, not skeleton. If I wanted this black part to be the main part that I'm going to rig everything to and have all the colors binded to, I'll go ahead and name this neck 1. And then I'll go ahead and highlight these other colors. I'll group them. And I'll go ahead and set the primary part as neck. Or this is supposed to be neck 1. I'll then go ahead and weld this. Created 6 welds. You can see they're all in here. And I'll do the same for the rest of these. I'll go ahead and group. Select the primary part as the neck that I didn't name. This will be neck 2. And continue along the line there. And then when you go ahead and go to rig this, you have your humanoid root part here that I didn't name. You'll start with the main controller point, which in this case would be the waist, because that'd be the center of mass. And then you'd work your way out. You go from the waist to the first tail joint, from the first to the second, from the second to the third, and then from the waist to the chest, from the chest to the first neck joint, the second neck joint, third, fourth, all that stuff. From the head to the jaw, from the chest to the arms, to the forearms, to the hands, to each of these finger digits, and so on and so forth. When you're done with the welds, you can ungroup them, and you should be fine as long as everything is actually welded to each other. Otherwise, you will get floating parts like this example practice thing that I have over here. I hope I explained everything right. I think I covered everything that I wanted to. But aside from that, there's a lot of rigging videos on YouTube for Roblox. And when it comes to actually animating these rigs, there's also quite a number of videos to show you how to get a rig like this or whatever and export it to Blender. And then from there you can learn the animation process, which I'm probably not going to make a video about because it's far too complex and subjective. This video ended up being 23 minutes long of footage, and so I think I'm going to cut it off before it gets any longer. I hope you learned something. If not, feel free to ask questions in the comments, and hopefully you figure out how to rig models. So, have a good night, and goodbye.